Hey, you're tuned into the Jersey Conference, and in today's video, we're going to do a full review of the Xbox Series X conference. What games released? What do we think about Halo Infinite? There's big news with the Xbox Game Pass. Make sure to stay tuned. We're going to cover all of that, and especially our thoughts on it. Hey everybody, and welcome to the Jersey Comic, where we bring you the news and reviews and your favorite comics, movies, and TV shows. As always, I'm Rob Moran, and with me across the other side of Quarantineville is...
Chris Heller, still here and still raggedy.
Yes. So today we got an amazing show for you guys. You already know because you clicked on that title. We are talking about the Xbox Game Conference, and also we're going to talk about Comic-Con at Home. Two very unique universes where we didn't get a live action conference for these big entertainment pieces of news, right? We're doing it at home. We're all on our PJs. I'm in, my nice little fuzzy slippers in the summer.
I don't think I've worn pants in 4 months.
Oh, thank God we do this from the waist up, guys, right?
Right? Oh, man.
We go right from the under boob up. That's where you get us.
That's it. That's all you get.
This is actually a crop top, guys. You don't even want to see what's underneath here.
He's got a crop top on.
Can you imagine?
I can. That's why I'm laughing.
Wait, you're laughing because... Why are you laughing?
Lovingly, of course.
All right.
It'd be hilarious.
So, speaking of laughing, we got the Xbox Game Conference. Now, before a lot of you guys start hating on the channel and my little joke there, I want to be full disclaimer. I am Xbox fan, right? Xbox, I usually get all systems because I'm spoiled and I waste my money and people hate me for doing it. But I usually get Xbox, then PlayStation, right?
Ugh.
So, we're going to talk about the Xbox Series X conference, the games that we liked about it. Of course, we're going to touch upon Halo Infinite and Game Pass. But before we get into, the games and all that kind of stuff, I wanted to give my impression to you guys at home what I thought of this game conference. In a word, I was a little disappointed. I thought PlayStation destroyed and killed it comparatively. You always do that comparison in the gaming world, right? PC versus Xbox versus PlayStation. Which one's better? What has the better exclusives, right? So with this one, I was like, all right, they got to come back hard. We had a whole conversation about it last week and weeks before because that's what we do here, right?
See last week's video.
Exactly. See it. I'll put it in the card. I probably won't because I'm lazy. But
better
you can click back. But on a serious note, this to me, and we're going to get in more detail about it, kind of felt less as a Xbox Series X conference and more of a Microsoft conference, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah. They
kind of show the games with a heavy emphasis on Game Pass, which it's going to revolutionize gaming. Nobody's going to argue that, right?
Yeah.
But when you go to a game conference, especially in the current climate that we're in, where we are in a scarce for entertainment and news and content, right? We're like, all right, we want the new big games. We know we're getting Halo Infinite. And what else? So the what else here, we have like State of Decay 3, Forza Motorsport, a lot of these other games that, really didn't pique my interest and I didn't think competed well with PlayStation. Now, Chris, I know you bleed blue, if you will, PlayStation all day, every day.
And New York Giants, yeah.
Yes, and New York Giants, right? What did you think of this conference after watching the whole thing, taking notes? How do you think it stacked up? I wanted to see from the other side of the fence's perspective.
First of all, hell of a week with on my end, just doing all this. A lot of just scattered everywhere. I was actually excited because in the midst of like Comic-Con being God knows where and terribly marketed, Xbox was the one thing I was like, date, time, boom, I know exactly where I'm going to be. I knew we were going to get a lot of Halo Infinite. I was hoping to get something like Fable, and we did.
Kind of.
And at the end of the day, Xbox to me kind of felt the same way it always does every year. But just less of it. And what I mean is one, I'm not a big Xbox guy. For Xbox to blow me away, they have to show me something, kind of like I said last week, that I'm going to buy this system over me already deciding to get PlayStation. Mm-hmm. It did not do that for me, again, but that isn't necessarily a bad thing. I know a lot of people are focused on, like, the amount of games and stuff. I really do think COVID has a big hold on everything going on.
Well, true. Yeah, you can imagine the games, even if they're in like the quote unquote final stages, right, or like the final wrap up, the limited amount of time that they have to work if they're starting to get back to work it's insane. Like game developers spend like 80-hour weeks, right? They spend crazy amount of time in their studio, if you will, to get the games done at the rate they are now. And now with COVID, they're getting like less than 40, right? Like let's say half.
Yeah,
like, it's slowing everything down.
Yeah, and I know people are like, well, how? All they do is work at computers. Why can't they do that at home? You're not going to have the same powered, machines that you're going to have in a work office than you are at like your home laptop.
Correct.
And the other question is, well, they've had the same deal with COVID that PlayStation has had, and they put out a slew of games. My answer is maybe PlayStation just started earlier working on this. Maybe they just had a different type of plan.
Yeah.
But I thought overall it was agreed. I think it was more of a Microsoft conference, even though the title is Xbox Series X Games Showcase. It felt to me more like a company thing, less of a games thing. A lot of the games seem current gen engine, not all focus on next gen when, like, dude, that's what you're selling. So if people are buying, and I loved that Phil Spencer looked exactly like a PS5. I laughed so hard.
That was funny. Let's talk a little bit about the games. Like, I want to talk about, of course, Halo Infinite, right? Halo Infinite is the watch game for Xbox right now. People are losing their minds. And then, obviously, you're getting a lot of criticism for this game online. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, which we are all on. Make sure you follow us. But people are a little upset, myself included, about the graphics, right? The graphics aren't, quote-unquote, next-gen. They're not as clean and pristine as people had hoped and expected, right? Especially when you see games like Forza Motorsport, like how beautiful that game is. And you compare it to Halo, you're like, all right, this seems a little lackluster. Like, where's all the beautiful prettiness? Now, this game has that built-in audience, right, of the Halo fans. Like, I'm getting it no matter what. Because, it's another Halo game. It's fun. The grappling hook looks great, right?
Yeah.
Like, we saw gameplay. It looks fun. The gameplay looks
switching
smooth.
Looks like seamless with weapons and tactics. It looks very seamless.
And like, hopefully they bring back the custom games, because that was one of the biggest things that we all loved, right?
Yeah.
So this game has that audience, but this game kind of had a bigger duty. Just like Chris, watching this conference, like, is Xbox gonna get me to buy the system, buy the game? Halo, aside from having that weight on it, also has the game of, people who are going to get the Xbox, who haven't played my game, is this enough to get new people in? And I don't know if it is. I know diehard Halo fans are going to buy it. I've talked to a lot of my friends, they're all going to buy it, which makes sense, right? It looks fun. It just doesn't look as clean as I would hope. And, you do have games with very terrible graphics that do very well, right? But it's just something like, when you expect a next-gen console game to come out, you expect a little bit more. You expect to be wowed. And I was very happy with Halo Infinite, but I didn't have that wow factor. What were you thinking about it?
I thought it was crazy to me that they didn't show multiplayer.
Really?
I as much as I'm not the biggest Halo fan, like, I like the story. I'm terrible at the multiplayer. Every Halo iteration has its great moments with multiplayer. It's a game where it's basically the perfect hybrid of a great first-person story and a great multiplayer gameplay. And I was expecting 343 to come out and blow people away with this game that they announced last year, that they showed last year. Obviously, there's a pandemic going on, but I thought that would have been the one game that was ready to go.
Yeah, I agree.
And for a game that big, there's also a huge group of Halo fans that buy it for multiplayer that don't even get around to the storyline, right? So I agree. Your diehard Halo fans are going to buy it regardless. Your diehard Halo fans are going to buy the system for it regardless. But the way it's set up seems to me like it has a longevity plan, and that's something Xbox announced too, which...
do you mean the way Halo Infinite is set up, or the way Xbox is set up?
No, well, both. So this kind of gets into... this gets into a little bit of our Game Pass conversation later, but which we'll definitely dive deep into. But it seems like Halo Infinite, they want it to be around for the next 10 years and kind of just expand upon it for this generation. Like, this is the Halo game for Series X. We're going to keep upgrading and adding new stuff on.
Correct.
Which has its pros and cons, which we'll talk about later, but that's what it looked like to me watching the trailer. I'm like, oh, okay, looks good. Doesn't look as good as Miles Morales did, or Horizon, or even some of Ratchet and Clank. Like, it had its moments. It looked cool. I thought the beginning was awesome with Master Chief, and the guy who's kind of like the comic relief. That little movie was great. The setting, he drops him, and you're like right in, right?
I want to talk about what you said that the game company are setting up, right? This is going to be like the Halo game for the Xbox Series X, and they're going to release installments and upgrade it. So many of the people in the know realize that, Bungie was the game behind it, the mind behind Halo, right?
Yeah.
And, with Destiny 2, they kind of have that, right? There's seasons and expansions and different changes and upgrades, if you will.
Wait, is it Bungie or 343?
It's 343 now, but I'm saying Bungie.
Oh, it used to be.
Destiny.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Bungie used to do it, and Bungie is now on Destiny, right? So my thinking with 343 is like, okay, we know Bungie, the innovators of Halo, and everybody knows Halo, and is doing this kind of game model. Maybe I don't want to say they're copying, because they're not, right? They have their own ideas, but this precedent of games being released and being upgraded is there, right? The Halo fandom is aware of Bungie and aware of Destiny and how they are doing that. So they're going to have that built into them already. They're like, oh, Halo's getting an update. That's changing. And the game, landscape, if you will, of current video games now, like especially a lot of multiplayer games, there's always updates, right? There's always changes. With Overwatch, there's balance updates, new heroes become viable.
Chapters, all
exactly,
that
stuff like that. You look at big MMOs like World of Warcraft, new expansion, new things, new graphics, right?
Which is basically like another game added on to the game.
Exactly. So that's what I'm starting to see now. A lot of game companies are starting to realize, okay, I don't have to produce every 2 years this new game. I could just do updates on it and then release it. So like,
you don't have to do the Assassin's Creed way. You can just kind of keep going with
it. Correct. Like I can see Call of Duty starting to do that soon, right? Like Warzone's insane. It's a 200 gigabyte game, takes up the whole thing.
Well, they're already making a new one, so
exactly.
Yeah.
But like, I can see them eventually adopting this model. It's Call of Duty. All right, now let's just do updates and change it.
Yeah.
And it kind of seems like instead of buying games for that $60, you're paying to play, right? Like, like where this bleeds right into our conversation. Like World of Warcraft, it's a monthly subscription. Other games have monthly subscriptions. These MMOs, and now Xbox is realizing, wait, this is something that we should do too, right? And it's something that the entertainment field, right? At the entertainment landscape, I use that word again, right? Like everybody's used to the subscription, like Netflix, subscribe, HBO Max, subscribe, Hulu, we pay a subscription, then we get it all. We don't have to buy movies anymore, right? Like music, people don't really buy music anymore. They buy their access to Spotify or Pandora and they stream it. So now Xbox with their Game Pass, it's essentially what it is. Like their Game Pass, they're eliminating Gold, they're combining Xbox Game Pass and Gold. You play online, it's like $15 a month. And with that, you get access to all these games to play. So now this console becomes more appealing to people who have their eyes on a budget, especially in this pandemic.
Yeah.
Do I pay $60 to get Halo? I don't know about it. I might play. $15 a month, I play Halo.
And I can play whatever I want.
Forza, State of Decay, what other games are listed in here? That's much more appealing. So you're telling me I pay, let's say $500, $600, whatever it is for a console. Then I pay a monthly subscription service, which I would already be paying whatever console I'm getting. But I also get to play these games. This makes the Xbox One X super competitive, if not almost dominating PlayStation, not in the terms of games, but in the terms of business and how it's run. And I think this is a brilliant move by Microsoft. Like, if I had to sum up this conference, this is a conference for Microsoft and Microsoft's Games Pass, and less about Xbox. But you see this kind of thing, and you're like I was stunned when I read more about it and realized my bang for my buck.
Yeah,
so
no,
that's pretty cool.
100%. I think Games Pass is the best thing out of this conference, and yet they didn't really talk much about it. They kind of just mentioned it. And it was kind of fell by the low side with all these fans either, taking a giant dump on the graphics of Halo or the other games. I will say it still is very surprising to me that they announced a lot of games. You don't remember a lot of them unless they're written down.
Yeah, exactly. Unless I'm looking at the thing, I'm like, oh, okay,
unless we're looking at a list. And the other side is it was all trailers and no dates. Mm-hmm. So they're all either really early development and they're not ready yet, or they're like so far down the pipeline, they're not even willing to show. They don't even have gameplay ready. There wasn't a lot of gameplay at all. But yeah, I think Game Pass is the future for Microsoft and Xbox. I think two things happened. Mm-hmm. I think the best thing that ever happened to PlayStation was the Xbox 360. I think
okay.
PlayStation getting that dose of humble pie, which is always delicious, but getting that slice of humble pie after I pass on the pie.
No humble pie for me.
But like, the fact that PS3 came out with a $600 price tag and 360 came out and was like, it's $250. Look at all these games we have ready. I think that was the best thing to happen to PlayStation because PlayStation 4 came back with a vengeance.
Yeah.
And it also completely overtook the story-driven, hardcore story-driven games. And I think Microsoft kind of sat there and was like, okay, maybe history repeats itself, right? Maybe the PS4 will be the best thing to happen to Microsoft in realizing we have great online multiplayer MMOs, MMORPGs, and our connection to PC is right there.
Yeah, that was the other thing. Like with Game Pass, like if you have Game Pass on console, like you could play it on PC and
no one's
on the
have
system.
That Microsoft Cloud. No one can have that but them.
Yeah, which is it's brilliant because that alludes back to the statement Phil Spencer made. Remember, like a couple weeks ago, the fact that you could play on any system you want, quote unquote, right? You could just play with your friends.
Yeah, which was also I was kind of hoping to see not so much like all third party games, but more of what he was talking about, and everything was just an Xbox exclusive, right? Like every game. So it was kind of like, okay, Phil, what are we doing now?
I think he was talking about the fact that you could play on the console or you could play on the PC, right?
Or PC or Xbox One or Xbox Series X.
But like having that fluidity, like that just dominates people. Like, oh, if I have a PC, I'm still gonna get my games from Microsoft. Why not? Because I'll get a console and I can play in the other room and double up. PlayStation, you only have the option of playing on the console.
But it's a drawback too, and here's why. As great as Game Pass and the idea of like, hey, here's $15, you can play Halo and stop and go play Fable, and it costs you $15 to play both games instead of $120 buying a disc, right?
Yeah.
The drawback is this: you better have content for not only a launch, but for this entire lifespan of this game service. If this is what you're going to do, you better have new content. You better have new IPs. You better have massive AAA titles launching at the right time. It's not an easy thing to keep up, right? It's almost like...
Well, I don't think you necessarily need to have... I mean, yes, you do need to have the big game titles. But I view this as a way for these smaller titles to actually get a chance on the stage. Like, if you're playing this, like, one of these smaller games, take your pick. Like, I might not pay $20, but if I could play for free, and I see it, like, highlighted this week, oh, indie exclusive, free to play, go ahead, download it. Sure, why not? Like, and that gets me to play an indie game that I might not ever have touched, which gives these smaller studios a voice in this thing. So I think it's more the fact of, if you keep the regular scheduled pace that we have these big games out, right? Because I don't think it's necessarily that's the issue, right?
Well,
I think this is a bigger voice for these smaller people.
The pacing, I agree. I think it's a great opportunity for that. If you're in, your AAA title came out in, spring, and your next big title is going to come out in fall, or summer, you have a couple months where it's like, hey, these are still really good titles.
Yeah.
But I think they are going to have the pressure of content, and maintaining some type of schedule with content. And we know how games are today. There's delays, there's fixes. Spider-Man was delayed twice. God of War was delayed like 5 months at one point.
I get that.
So like if that happens to a big time game, the question is it worth it for some person who's like, yeah, I play a bunch of games. I don't play games every day, or I don't play for this many hours a day for that to be worth it.
Well, here's the thing with that. Like, I get what you're saying, and logically that makes sense. But Chris, how many countless people have subscriptions to Hulu,
absolutely,
Netflix, HBO, and they barely use it, right?
Forget that. Gym memberships. How many gym memberships are like top 3 most wasted money makers in the United States? Like, how many people have gym memberships and don't go to the gym?
Yeah, but that's the thing. People forget about it. It's not a big thing, and they just let it rock. They're like, oh, I'll play once in a while. Like, the fact, I think this could be almost more profitable to them because, like, you're getting $15 a month from somebody who maybe buy one to 2 games a year. They're still going to have that subscription service so they can play online. They might be making more money directly, Microsoft. True. So,
and I'm not saying it's a bad idea. I think it's a great idea. I'm just saying within that great idea, there's going to be certain expectations from fans and people, especially if you're an Xbox fan. And Xbox, did your cat die?
No, I thought he did. He's
But like, if you're an Xbox fan and you are like, hey, I didn't go out and buy a PlayStation 5. Who has all these great games that I could just come home and play if I don't want to deal with anybody, or I just want to live in a story world. I'm getting this, and yet I better not second guess my purchase, is what I'm saying. You can't in this time and place have a second guess purchase because money is too tight and the world is too tight.
I get that,
and that's the other. But the other positive is obviously, hey, if they make more money off of it, like a Netflix or a Disney Plus. Why the hell not? It's a great idea, and it kind of separates them almost from... Now it almost seems like PlayStation and Nintendo are a little more similar, and Microsoft's kind of its own piece of the pie. Because you have Nintendo, which is all IP, right? That's all it is. PlayStation's IP is building so rapidly, Microsoft is like, hey, there's no way we're going to catch them at this point. Why don't we focus on something unique?
This is starting to feel like Microsoft is carving its own niche into the pie, like you said. Like, if this is done right, Microsoft could almost be not saying Xbox, right? I'm not saying the console, but the Microsoft Game Pass could almost be the number 1 slot, and then you have PlayStation and Nintendo fighting over number 2. And the reason I
still think PlayStation's still going to be number 1, but that's just me. And not being biased. I just think...
console-wise, yes.
I think console and business-wise, PlayStation's still going to be the best way to play overall.
I think games-wise and console-wise, I'm with you. As much as I want to be Xbox. But I think this Game Pass, if done the right way, is going to be to a point where most hardcore gamers are going to have it and want it. Right? Yeah. Even if you don't have Xbox, I can see people getting this.
It's a hardcore gamer's dream, right?
Correct.
I don't have to walk into a GameStop and deal with an employee that hates his life and buy or pre-order a game. I don't have to order off of Amazon and wait another 2 days. I could just go on digitally. I have my subscription. I'm sure there'll be a yearly fee. That is like, cheaper. 10-15% discount. And you could just say, hey, whatever I want to play, I could just go on. I could save it to the Microsoft Cloud, which obviously is is probably the biggest thing they have that Sony and Nintendo does not have anything close to that.
And like you said, like it's starting to seem like for me, and I'm sure you agree, like the visualization I get of like the Xbox gamer is like the hardcore gamer. The PlayStation is the story-driven gamer. And then you have the Nintendo. It's like, the fun family game system, right? Like, they're all becoming even more their own niche and carving out their own, which is cool.
Yeah, and I don't think, by any means, like, I don't think the Xbox conference was good, personally.
No. I mean, look at Fable.
Fable looked great.
Like, it did, but, like, it seems like a restart into the world. I'm like, all right, cool. I'm expecting a trailer.
It's definitely a reboot.
And we just saw, like, a frog eating a bug, Fabled. And I'm like, come on, you gotta give me a little bit
more
than that.
It was a fairy.
Was it a fairy? Sorry.
Yeah, it ate the like Tinkerbell.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think Fable is a very unique IP. I think Xbox is really kind of late to the game of kind of getting that back up and running. but I'm glad they are. But again, yeah, like there's, you know, it was such a teaser that it really wasn't even a trailer.
Yeah.
Like the way like Horizon ended the PlayStation show, right? It was a trailer teaser. There was, it said 2021. It even gave a year, but like there was no gameplay, but that was a trailer. You know what I mean? Like you saw
that looked good.
And then for Fable, it was like 15 seconds, and it's like, hey, we're making it. So I think maybe pandemic-wise, they're really behind on a lot of stuff. Some of the other games, like Ori and the Will of the Wisp, was very confusing to me in the fact that they're focused on a remaster already for a game that is beautifully unique. And I wonder why, like, maybe instead of a remaster, if they would have focused on it, maybe like, hey, if you go to Xbox Series X, you get these extra levels, or you get this DLC, or like a 1.5 or something like that. So that was a little odd for me to do a remaster this soon, because that game only came out a couple months ago.
I agree.
And a lot of the other titles were interesting, like State of Decay, the graphics look really cool. But, no idea when stuff's coming out. A lot of this stuff didn't have date. Crossfire X was iffy. They threw out a bunch of titles, but to me, everything seemed either, first-person shooter or apocalyptic.
Yeah.
And that's without Gears of War, which is both. But, like, it all seemed kind of the same game to me, where you get a Nintendo conference, a full Nintendo conference, or a PlayStation conference, and there's all these different types of games for all these different types of gamers, whether it's, horror, action, RPG, puzzle, whatever. To me, like they showed Tetris at the Xbox conference, which obviously Tetris is one of the best games ever. But it's like, is that really we're going to Tetris for this show? Like in a show where it's like we are promoting you buying hundreds of dollars worth of stuff.
I don't think you could ever fault somebody putting Tetris in there. It's like, thank you for putting it in.
I mean, I can put it on my phone for free.
But you could get a console and play it on
but
there.
You can get a next-gen console.
Imagine the music.
I think it's way more advanced now than a bunch of doo-doos.
Yeah, they're like, I forget that lasers like, coming out and shooting you.
But, like, I don't know. I felt like it was, it felt a little rushed where they were just like, all right, throw this in.
The conference as a whole?
You have a trailer, throw it in.
I agree.
And, like, usually, obviously, Xbox is not used to this either, right? If anyone is an E3 staple, they are the E3 staple. It made me miss E3 a lot too, the way these conferences are. But again, it's a weird world we live in right now. Everything's delayed, and companies are still trying to figure out stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, overall, I was kind of disappointed. And
I think that's a great way to sum up this conference. The conference overall was disappointing. Game Pass sounds really cool. Halo's alright. You know what I mean? That's it.
Yeah, and my other point was, if Halo is the 10-year project it's supposed to be, or supposedly is, on Game Pass, does it release without multiplayer, and then it gets updated? Does it release graphics-wise and gets all these updates? Like, that's the other thing with Game Pass.
Maybe the graphics. I don't know.
If you have Game Pass, these games can last longer if they keep adding stuff to it, but you have to give people a reason to get it in the first place. And I think they gave like 0.5 of a reason, which was Halo, not looking next gen, and then Fable in a question mark a year. So I don't know. We'll see. I think Game Pass is going to be revolutionary, though. I think it's going to be really good for them, for Microsoft to get into their own niche. And I think PlayStation wins.